Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We are back in our Genesis study. We've been away for a couple of weeks, but we are now in chapter 26. And just as a recap, last several weeks we've watched the death of Abraham and his burial, and how his son now is the focus, and his sons. And we looked at his two sons, Jacob and Esau, and we see how Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. And here now in chapter 26, we're going to go and dig deep into the life of Isaac. And this chapter 26 is the most complete chapter on Isaac, because, you know, as we go through scripture and we looked at the patriarchs, we see many chapters on Abraham. And then we see many chapters on his son Jacob and even Joseph. But Isaac, it's a very small portion, you know, and it's interesting how Yah chose to do that. I don't know why, but as we looked at him in the role of Yahusha, as his father was about to sacrifice him, and Yah said, "I will provide myself a sacrifice," we see how Isaac is that picture of Messiah. But yet we have this small portion of information about him and his life. But thankfully, we have this chapter we can look at and pull out what Yah wants for us, even as we look through the words of Moshe as he described what Yah wanted us to hear here. So we have 34 verses, and we'll do 35 verses. So we'll do 7 verses at a time and just kind of walk through and see what Yah is saying to us. So who wants to go first? First 7 verses.
I'll read.
No, I want to read.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, brother. I'll let you read.
Thank you. It says in Genesis 26, starting in verse 1, and there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And Yahuah appeared unto him, and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and I will bless thee, For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And Isaac dwelled in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon.
Pull it out, brother.
Well, you know, for this portion, I always like to verse 5. It's always one of those one verses that I like to pull out, even at all times, because most people, we get into this topic and debate with people in the world, and they say, "Oh, we don't got to do this, we don't got to do that," but we see our father Abraham. You know, the father Abraham, he says, because that Abraham obeyed my voice, so he obeyed his voice. So that's the whole word, you know what I'm saying? The word that comes from Yah. He says, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. And so we see 3 different areas that we all got to look more into, of course, all the time, and say, what are his commandments? You know what I'm saying? What are his statutes and what are his laws? and they all come together as one, you know. And so praise God. I just like that verse.
Yeah, and it's amazing how, you know, that's Torah. And, you know, we kind of were talking about it earlier when we were talking about spirit and in truth. And, you know, one of the things that that I'm always reminded of is to hold fast and stay away from sin. But we don't just stay away from sin, we cling to something that keeps us from sin. You know, the very idea of repent means turn to Torah. Like you can't leave something and be empty. You have to leave something and fill it. So as we go back to Torah, it prevents us from going down that same road. And this here, what he says in verse 5, JP, is the very meaning of Hebrew. That's what a Hebrew was. That's what a Hebrew is. You know, yes, bloodline descendants, Judah, yes, all the Israelites, yes, all of the tribes. But a Hebrew is the one that follows his laws, statutes, and judgments. And we need to get that through our heads. We need to speak that to the world because there's such a misunderstanding about that, and it leads to sin and death. So great verse to pull out. Brother Will.
Yeah, I just saw the mic. Yeah, that verse 5 should be a must to go to whenever we are speaking to those that have not come to the truth. That verse, I get chills because I just got done going over this chapter with someone. And this verse 5 right here is the one that will justify that his laws, statutes, and commandments were being obeyed back then when someone says they have been done away with. Before the commandments and the tablets, what did they follow? There was nothing. This verse 5 is a very powerful verse, and we should hold it sacred for those occasions.
Good stuff, brother. Absolutely. Brother Marshall and Mike.
About how Abraham obeyed his voice, and then he says, "Indeed, God my watch, and my commandments, my statutes, and my Torah." So it's like, what is God in His watch? You know, I was wondering, what do you guys have like an answer to what it means to guard His watch? Because there's 4 watches in the day. I mean, I think it's 4. So then I was thinking about how Mashiach would go in and pray all night, for instance, and that would mean like the prayer that's in the secret place would be the watch of waiting for His counsel in the secret place. But then you're not just praying; you are guarding His by guarding His watch. Not only that you're praying, but you're also keeping His Torah. So then the whole come together once you do it all. There you go.
This is the watches of the night you're asking about. This is that document, Brother Rod, that I was telling you about that I wanted that Brother Tyrone shared with me. To see the different segments of time or hours, if you will, of the daylight hours and the watch segments of the night. Which we have dusk and twilight, evening, all that's in the first hour after even, I guess, as you said, Brother Rod, even where the sun is setting. So I'm assuming that this is the time frames that Scripture is referring to there in those night watches.
Hallelujah.
Sometimes it's best to see an image, huh?
Yes. I'm very visual, so it's I learned fast also with that, but it's actually very good. It's like, so could it be how Abraham was watching the watch. You know, he was like a watcher, because what is a watcher? He's a guardian. What does he guard? He guards Torah. He guards the word of Yahuah. You know, and that's how he could stand, and he could be like the great man. I don't want to say that he was yesterday, because Abraham is in the bosom of is where the Father has led him. You know, like where he is today. So like how we are called, Mashiach did the same thing, and how we are called to follow Mashiach and do what he did. You know, and going back to the sinning part is, I'm never comfortable saying that I'm gonna sin anyway when I know Yah hates the sin. You know, so it's like, if you love him, are you going to tell your mind, your body, that you're going to sin anyway? It doesn't make sense, the fact that you love him. You know, but you're telling yourself, as an athlete who's supposed to run lawfully, that you're going to sin anyway. You're not helping your faith. You know, so like when we read this and see how what we ought to do in order to walk, we got to say, yes, I can do it. He says, go and sin no more. I'm going to go and I'm going to sin no more. That once you do it, he's seeing your zeal to obey him, to please him, and to live, because to live is to literally, there's no sin when there's true life. So then he's seeing your zeal, and now his grace is just leading you. Like the verse 5, and also the beginning of chapter 26, when he says how Isaac went to Abimelech, then Yahuwah appeared to him and said, don't go down to Egypt. So it seemed like Isaac was waiting for Yahuwah's counsel before he would do anything. And then the same way for David, the same way for like even everywhere we could see that how they were waiting for Yahuwah's counsel, where he would want them to go. And he would come and say, don't go there, don't do this, but then go there. You know, so it's like how he had to go first, acknowledge Yah, and then Yah directed him in all of his ways. That's all I have for now.
Praise Yah, brother. I was looking up. You mentioned watch, and when I was reading in my in the King James version, it says charge. So I was really trying to get to the depth of what that means. You know, and it speaks of obligation. It speaks of service division, which you looked at the watch times. It also speaks of worship. But it seems to surround his post and where he placed him. So I definitely like to look into that more. But yeah, that's something I definitely want to look into more when it says kept my charge. Some of you have kept my watch. So it's all tied into commandments, statutes, and judgments. So I agree with JP. That's something I never looked at as far as what charge means there, what watch means there. So if anyone can expound on that. But we got two more hands, Mike, then the Mecca, and then I'll kind of share what I see as well.
All right. Yeah, I actually want to comment on the verse 5 thing as well too, because yeah, a lot of people, not only you know, people who don't believe in Torah, but people who also believe in Torah, as in, you know, keeping commandments, misunderstand the fact that is what it's always been about, and it wasn't about blood and nothing like that, because like there's a couple verses in Torah that certain people like to use to say Yah tells the Israelites not to go into these nations, not to make covenants, but I had them written down, and if I can read a couple of them real quick, you got Exodus 23:32. He tells them, I'm just going to paraphrase them, but he tells them not to make covenants with them or with their gods, talking about a pagan nation. Exodus 34:15, again, not to make covenants with them, or they'll go a whoring after their gods and do their sacrifice and eat the meat of their sacrifices. Numbers 33:52 was he was telling them to pluck down their altars and their high places. And Deuteronomy 7:24, not to let their sons marry the women of the nations, because they will cause them to turn away and to follow their gods. So the context, every single time that Yah tells the Israelites not to make covenants or marry or go into the nations, the context each and every time was because they were serving other gods and they were worshiping other gods. But so if the reason why they weren't allowed to mingle with these other people was because they were worshiping gods, that was the reason. Well, then what would happen if they stopped worshiping those other gods and turned to Yahuwah? Well, I think that would be lifted. So here we have Caleb, right? Caleb was the son of Zephaniah, who was a Kenizzite, which is a descendant of Esau, so the Edomites.
Right.
And we have Numbers 14, verse 20 to I think 24. It says, "Oh, Yahuwah said, I have." He's talking to Joshua. Joshua prayed, and Yahuwah said, "I have pardoned according to thy word. But as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of Yahuwah, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them that provoked me see it. But my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and he hath followed me fully, him will I bring into the land wherein he went, and his seed shall possess it." So out of all of Egypt, the only 2 people were allowed to go in from that generation that was delivered out of Egypt, and that was Joshua, who led them in, and Caleb, who at the end of the day is a descendant of the Edomites. And not only is Caleb allowed in because he wholly followed Yahuwah, also he was even called after the tribe of Judah. So it's like, and then we have this throughout Scripture. I mean, I'm supposed to be talking to 2 Israelites later tonight about this. So I got plenty of firepower on this using Scripture, like without even having to go in the New Testament, just the Old Testament alone. There is so much where anyone has came into Israel and been called after the name of Israel. Even the very fact when y'all gave the commandments on Mount Sinai, he mentions the strangers who are with them, tells them that there's one law for the native and the non-native born, and when the non-native born sojourns with them and follows the commandments, that they will be as one that is native born. So it's like,
Amen.
Like
Amen.
when Paul says there's no longer Jew, when Paul says there's no longer Jew nor Greek, that wasn't a new saying.
Right.
He was saying that to new converts. Now that you have come into Israel,
Right.
there is no Jew nor Greek. But if you're not a part of this covenant, then yeah.
Amen, Mike.
Absolutely, brother.
Absolutely, Mike.
I think that,
yes, sir. I'm right there with you, 100%, Mike. Hallelujah. That is indeed what the Scriptures say. Yep.
Yeah, I think that's what I was speaking on earlier when we were talking about just what a Hebrew means. What does it mean to be a Hebrew? And just like people take the Pauline letters when he's speaking to a specific people for a specific purpose, and they make doctrine out of it, they do the same thing with these words here and what they read, and they don't fully understand what Yahuwah is telling us. So, Great point, Mike.
Amen.
Can I break this down for you, brother? You asked about that. I think since you're talking about this part of it, let me share with you these words and what they mean.
Okay.
We're talking about Genesis 26:5 here, which is what is the qualifications for being a Yasharalite, right? Descendant of Abraham, obeyed, and he kept, or he preserved his charge. That was the first question, was the charge, which is the Strong's 4931 Mishmereth. And it's like a guard, it's a watch, a charge, a function. But if you get in here, it also can be a duty. It's something that's a safeguard. You're supposed to guard and to watch. We hear him talking about these things as far as his ways, that we're supposed to guard his Sabbath, right? And keep it, those kind of things is what he's talking about here when he's giving us charge, custody, to watch and to guard that ordinance that he's prescribed for us here. So I can see what he's talking about in that sense. And then he goes on to say, my commandment, my mitzvah, my statutes, which the statutes are basically something that's prescribed. It's a statute, it's a appointed time, right? So like we just came out of, so we're supposed to guard the appointed times. His feast basically is that, and then his Torah, which is his instructions. So those are the things that we're supposed to do to qualify to be a Yasharalite. Aren't those the things that we're prescribing to break it down and try to follow? Exactly what he just said there is what he told, called Abraham. He obeyed and he kept that. That's why he was able. I got some other things I'll share about what I'm seeing, but I just wanted to address that part of it to see if we can get clarity there, about what it means.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I think it's definitely important that we understand what it means, especially in regards to what we're doing. Otherwise we're just giving vain worship, right? Spirit and truth. So, as always, the direction that Yahuwah takes us in always matches up. I don't ever want to take that for granted. You know what I'm saying? Because just to let everybody in, Rick and I did not discuss what the afternoon lesson was going to be on. We decided when he asked. So how it tied into this morning's message is beautiful, and it always happens. And that's a move of the Ruach. So we always got to be tied in. Brother Mecca, and then I'll go. Oh, and then Marshall.
Okay. All right. So, I was looking at Romans, this verse, I always match it up with Romans chapter 4, because it Paul talks about how, he's talking about the belief of the uncircumcised and the belief of the circumcised. And, this is where, when we speak to people who try to say, it's, Gentiles aren't required to keep Torah, and they're not required to keep the laws. This is something that they use as ammunition. And when you fully read it and get the understanding, you can see exactly what it's saying. So Romans chapter 4, starting at verse 9, I'll start at verse 8. It says, "Blessed is the man to whom Yahuwah will not impute sin. Comes this blessedness then upon the circumcision only, or upon the uncircumcision also? For we that say belief was reckoned to Abraham for righteousness. How was it then reckoned? When he was in circumcision or in uncircumcision? Not in circumcision, but in uncircumcision. And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the belief which he had, yet being uncircumcised, that he might be the father of all them that believe, though they be not circumcised, that the righteousness might be imputed unto them also. And the father of circumcision to them who are not of the circumcision only, but who also walk in the steps of that belief of our father Abraham, which he had, yet being uncircumcised." So you see, he was even walking out something in his uncircumcision. What was his belief? What was he walking in when he was uncircumcised? He was walking in Torah. He was walking in what exactly what Genesis 26:5 is saying. He was walking in the statutes, the laws, the commandments, guarding the watch of Yahuah. So we can't say, oh, that Abraham was just, he just believed and that's all he did. No, he was walking something out. And that's exactly what he was walking out. He was walking out Torah, and so that is where, the circumcision was then given to him as a sign, and so, yes, Gentiles as well have to keep the commandments, even in their uncircumcision, but, it's through our belief first, and then we walk out the commandments of Yahuwah, and that's what makes us righteous.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you. And that verse 5, there's so much there. It's interesting how we spent all of our time there so far. And I'm praying that we can get out of this first 7 verses, but I don't know. We might not, because there's so many things that you guys didn't speak on. So let's look at a few of them. So verse 1, it says, there was a famine in the land besides the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. Now, the first thing I want us to see here is the fact that this is mirroring something that happened with his father, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, it says, and Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. Now, it's not the same Abimelech. Remember, Abimelech is a title, so it's a different person that he's dealing with. But Gerar, this is interesting, where it sits is on the border of Egypt. And Mike talked about how, or the reasons that he told them not to dwell or commingle. But what he didn't talk about is the fact that Israel, consistent throughout we get all the way into Isaiah chapter 30, Yahuwah is still telling them, don't go down into Egypt. Why? And just to be on the shadow of Egypt, just to be in the shadow of comfort, because even though they were in captivity there, even though they were slaves there was a comfort level that they had, that they would be taken care of, that there would be shelter, that there would be food, that there would be water, that there was no famine there. And they constantly, even in Isaac obeying him, he still was right on the border of Egypt. So much so that in the next verse, Yahuwah has to tell him, don't go down into Egypt. Why? Because we always want to go where we're comfortable. How did we start out this morning? Talking about doing things that take us out of our comfort zone. That's the only way to live this life. We're going to constantly be in those situations. So I wanted us to see that. But then the other part of that is in verse 6 and 7. It says, so Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked about his wife. Does it sound familiar? Right? And he says, she is my sister. Does that sound familiar? And then, lest the men place and kill me, Rebekah, because she is beautiful. Does that sound familiar? Now it came to pass, verse 8, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, the king of the Philistines, stood through the window and saw that there was Isaac, showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. So we're going to get into that in the next couple verses. But the whole point I was trying to bring out is that these first 7 verses and on are mirroring something that his father did. He's doing the exact same thing. So even though Yahuwah is saying, I'm blessing you, I'm keeping this covenant with you, primarily because your father did these things, verse 5, that we just finished talking about, Isaac still does the same. He still makes the same mistake. And how Yahuwah's grace reigns over all of that as we go through it. So I wanted to pull those 3 things out because nobody brought those out. But what do y'all think about that? What's going on here? What is Yahuwah trying to tell us? Marshall and then Mike.
Brother, I was just thinking, I'm like, when Yahuwah gives you a wife, he gives you a woman. Like, he gives you a wife so much. When Adam sees Eve, he's like, all came out of his mouth was flesh of my flesh, bones of my bones. You know, it's like when you see Abraham and the same thing that he did when he went to Egypt. When you see Isaac, it's like father, like son. So you may have heard the story, and he was in him, you know, to do it. Though Abraham, Sarah was his sister, so he didn't lie. But Rebecca was not. She may have been his cousin, but though today I would call my cousin my sister, but then, you know, she was, they were not. She was not his sister. So that I believe that was a mistake, you know, because there's no lie that's a white lie. But I see the circle that was continuous. But how when Yahuwah is providing for you, he truly provides for you. But it's the whole thing, you know, it's just beautiful. He gives you a pearl. And the other thing I wanted to mention before this is the fact that when we're talking about keeping Torah, but there's other people who keep Torah without Mashiach, and they in their head believe they will make it to heaven.
Right.
But the only way Yahuwah is looking at us is only through Mashiach. It's not aside from him. We are nothing. I can keep all Shabbat. I'm not even keeping Shabbat if I'm not in Mashiach. I can say that I'm resting, but there's no Shabbat without him. So then when we say we walk in Torah, we have to understand in who we are walking in. He's the true vine. And he says, abide in me. And by abiding in me, then you keep in my Torah. So when we believe in him, we believe in the blood of the Lamb. Now we are redeemed. We are now grafted in because of the mercies of the Father. Now we are in the house. He's now teaching us how to live. So there's even many Christians who don't want to be part of it. They don't want to say they're part of Israel because of the other Jews. You know, it's like, no, wait. What the blood of the Lamb does, it makes you part of the family, and he is Israel. You know, so when you take his blood upon yourself, he washes you, and you are part of him now. Now he's teaching you how to walk, and that's what he's doing with us now. You know, so I don't want to separate obeying the Torah from Mashiach and walking in Mashiach, because it's in him that we keep Torah. You know, it's only in him that we obey Yah. Aside from him, we can't please Yah at all. Because we are like, how does the scripture say? It's like how our heart is deceitful above all things. And there's so many other scriptures that testify that we are, I mean, even look at Isaac. Though he pleased Yah, still he was making mistakes. Abraham still was making mistakes. All of us are still making mistakes. But then the Father is looking at us through his Son. You know, it's like he's still looking at us through his grace, through his truth, through his character. It's like, who is he? He's salvation. He's looking at us through that sight. We believe in his salvation. And that's in what we walk in when we keep in his Torah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that was the point of what Yahusha was telling the woman at the well. Like that, I'm the true vine, I'm the water. You guys are looking at Mount Gerizim. You guys are looking at the law thinking that it's a prerequisite for salvation, or that it's an alternative route, when Spirit and Truth knows that you come through me. So that is the whole point of the law. It is Yahusha. It is the word. So
yeah,
great point, brother. And you see how it ties in again to this morning.
Hallelujah.
Fluency is what Yahuwah brings, what the Ruach brings.
Yeah, it's like a melody, like a symphony, like a harmony.
Yeah.
Yes, hallelujah.
Brother Mike, and then JP.
Okay, so I'll use your Abimelech one to go right back again to verse 5. Because tying this in, again, Yah's people are those who obey him. Doesn't matter the race. So if you look at the first Abimelech, right, in Genesis 20, Abimelech, that king was actually considered righteous, because it says when he was lied to first by Abraham about Sarah, what is it? Okay, verse 3. After Abimelech took his wife, Verse 3 says, "But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night to him, Behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife." But Abimelech had not come near her, and said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, She is my sister. And she herself said, He is my brother, and the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands have I done this. And Yahuwah said unto him in a dream, Yea, I know that thou did this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. So, Yah himself isn't necessarily in right here to call him a righteous nation, but Abimelech acknowledged and said that we're a righteous, or without saying a righteous nation, that he did this out of the integrity of his heart, because and Yahuwah agrees and even goes to tell him that he's protecting him. He protected him from sinning against him. Now, if you look at this in chapter 26, Yahuwah didn't tell Abimelech anything. Yah wasn't protecting him. He wasn't thinking himself as righteous or nothing. So even here, what I'm saying is like,
well, there's a difference there. There's
exactly,
a difference there.
That the time that Abraham was there, it was considered a righteous nation. But through the generations, just like with Israel, right, their sons came to not know the Father, and they sinned against them. Same thing here with the Philistines, because we see the Philistines later on here that they're the enemy of Israel.
Well, Abimelech in chapter 20 is still a pagan king, but Yahuwah came to him in a dream to prevent him from doing anything with Sarah, so that he would protect.
Well, where does it say that he was a pagan king, though?
It doesn't, but the Philistines were.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that. I mean, according to what it's saying, it doesn't show that. It doesn't show that they always were.
Well, if you look at verse,
because chapter 20.
If you look at verse 5, if you look at verse 5, chapter 20,
okay,
he says, "In the integrity of my heart and innocent of my hands, I have done this." And Yahuwah said to him in a dream, "Yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her." So, in other words, he didn't give him the way out in saying that he was righteous. He said, "I stopped you. I came to you in a dream." The difference is this Abimelech doesn't hear from Yah. He actually witnesses Rebekah and Isaac interacting with one another that clearly shows that they were more than brother and sister. So there's a difference between the two. But the idea, I mean, because I think we went over this before when we were actually going through chapter 20. The very reason that Abraham thought that Abimelech would be an enemy and that they would take his wife is because they weren't followers of Yah. So,
yeah, but that was an assumption in verse 11, because it says, "And Abraham said, Because I thought surely the fear of Yah is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake." But based off of what happened, he was incorrect. Yahuwah Abimelech, and Abimelech literally feared and went, and that's when he went to speak to Abraham. Said, "What have you done?" And as we said, I know Yahuwah out of his mouth didn't call them a righteous nation, but there has to be some context, them calling themselves a righteous nation. And then Yahuwah was saying that he stopped him from doing it. He did it out of the innocence or integrity of his heart. So for me, there's no signs of this being a pagan nation. It's only Abraham's assumption that they did not fear Yah. He said, "I assume that they didn't. That the fear of Yah was not in this place."
right. No, that's a good point.
Yeah, because the actions show the exact opposite. Abimelech was afraid, and he went and spoke and addressed. Not only did he go and address him and give the wife back. So he repented from his unintentional sin, his unwillful sin. He repented and still blessed Abraham and the healing and everything.
Right. But
I don't.
I see what you're saying, and I think that you have a vital point there. But we know that same Abimelech, the people that followed him further, they broke the covenant that he made.
Oh, absolutely. That was my point. That was my point. So, and that's my distinction in chapters 20 in this chapter is that you see that Abimelech actual protection from Yah stops him from the innocence or the integrity of his heart. He was into a sin, and Yahuah, because of that, says that he didn't allow him to. Now, this Yah didn't show him, is what I'm saying. Now, yes, he still saw, but I forget what he saw. I'm seeing Yah's interaction with this person. He didn't have one. Yah interacted with the other. He did not interact. I think there's a reason. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, I'm not going to dispute that, but I'm not going to dispute that. But I'm going to reserve my full agreement to that because it doesn't say that either. We do have action though, so your point is a valid one. I'll put it that way. But you're right. We do clearly see a distinction between that Abimelech and the Abimelech that is running this country that they're in at this point. So good stuff, brother. I definitely want to look into that more. I can't argue against that. Praise Yah. JP, you still want to speak?
Oh, I just wanted. Oh, sorry, is that loud? No, I just wanted to get back to. I was loving that. Of course, I love that verse 5, but it always takes me back, to the question, like when you call yourself, oh, I'm an Israelite, or I'm a, what are you, into today's world. And so I just want to bring us to Exodus, because from verse 5 it took me to here. Exodus chapter 3, verse 18. And he says here, and he's talking to Moses, he says, and they shall listen to your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Yasharal, to the sovereign of Mitzrayim, and you shall say to him, Yahuah Elohim of the Hebrews has met with us. And so I just always take it back to there. I tell people, like, I'm a Hebrew. It's like because if he is your Elohim, if Yahuah is your Elohim, he says here that he's of the Hebrews, a specific people. So I just thought that was amazing. Just to tie it back in, just to kind of go back to 26:5. If you are a Hebrew, you're going to keep his instructions, a plural, right? Like me and Nate had spoke about that. That word there is not just Torah, it's Torah, and it's more of a plural sense. So it's like the whole word, and not just the first 5 books like most people see is the Torah. You know what I'm saying? So praise Yah, brother.
Yeah, I think we had actually talked about that a couple of weeks back, how the prophets point to Torah, how the Brit Hadashah points to Torah, meaning that everything is discussed as Torah, so the whole word is Torah. So yes, it is more than just the Pentateuch, as it's called, the first 5 books. So good stuff, JP. Brother Will.
Okay. Yeah. While you guys were discussing back and forth your understanding and point of view on your take on this subject here, I had to go back and refresh my mind on chapter 20 a bit. Go over that chapter just to get a grip on both of yours understanding. But this is so far. I have to marinate a little more on what Mike was saying to take it in. see where I'm at with his angle. But in relevance to what you were saying, Rod, there is a verse to support your point of view as well. And if we go back to, let's start off in chapter 20, verse 10, and it's just 2 verses. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what sawest thou that thou hast done this thing? Okay, now here's verse 11 that really grabs me, that supports your angle, right? And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake.
Right.
So Abraham was under the understanding there that the fear of God was not in this place, which kind of lines up with what you were saying there a bit. I still have to back with Mike's angle a little bit, but that's where I'm at with this so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was basing it on too. But what Mike's point of view was that because this was an assumption of Abraham, because he's assuming that the fear of Yah was not in this place, then maybe the fear of Yah was in this place based on his actions. That's Mike's argument, which I can't disagree with. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't say that the fear of Yah was not in this place. It says that he thought.
Well, it depends on the version you're reading. This one is the Blue Letter Bible,
right?
And it says, surely the fear of God is not in this place. So there's a little gray section there on this. He thought for sure the fear of God was not in this place.
Well, it says in my verse it says, and Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear. So I thought surely is kind of an oxymoronic statement, because I thought means that you really don't know. You're assuming. And then surely means that you surely there is no fear of Yah here. So you're assuming that surely there's no fear. Doesn't mean that there is no fear here. So the argument stays, yes, this is what I based it on, because as I read it, that's what I saw. And I was like, okay, well, Yah went to him in a dream because he was about to lay with Sarah, or somebody was. But if Yah interrupts and says, even in your heart, you didn't do it, but it was me who stopped you. It wasn't you, it was me. So he takes the accolade away from him and says, no, it was me that stopped you. So
if we leave it there, I can understand that point, but I go a little deeper in thought and I know we have to move on here, and that there is a reason in my mind why Abraham thought that. He knew something about those people. Right. So, a little deep, there's a reason why he brought that up. I just leave it at that for now,
Yeah, I think you're right. But I also think that there's some presumption there. And as we look at what is actually being said, there remains that glitter of doubt as to what the country truly was. Now, yes, I agree that Abraham saw something. That's why he thought that. Maybe he thought that only the people that were with him were following Yah, versus truly knowing whether they did or not, based upon people that he came in contact with before. But it's very possible that he presumed it and they weren't. But it's also possible, what you're saying is that there is something that out of their actions that proved that they weren't followers of Yah, and that Yah truly did intervene. And
because I'm thinking, why would he be in fear of something happening to him if he thought for sure the people there were of holiness? You wouldn't worry about that. But anyway, that can go a little deeper. It's just a point I wanted to bring up. Everyone.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth looking at more. I mean, and it does tie into what we're talking about. So I appreciate your view, brother. It definitely makes sense. But anyone see anything else in the first 7 verses? We haven't gotten far, but that's good. That's good. That means we're truly trying to see what Father is telling us in this passage of Scripture. Who wants to read verse 8 through 14?
I got a couple things I'd like to say about that before we go on. I can't raise my hand here, so other than this. So.
Oh, Nate wants to go after you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, as I'm looking at this, I see that Yahuah is reconfirming his covenant with Isaac, right? He's given him instructions and a promise, as we learned before. There's instructions. He told him, "Don't go down to Mitzrayim. Dwell in the land which I shall tell you of." So, and then he tells him to sojourn there, and I will be with you, and I will barak you, and for unto you, unto the seed, I will give Aleph Tav, all the countries, as a covenant that he's made to give him the countries, and I will perform Aleph Tav, the oath, which I swore unto Abraham your father, and I will make Aleph Tav your seed to multiply as the stars of the Shamayim, and I will give unto your seed Aleph Tav all the countries. So as we know, these Aleph Tavs are placed strategically in places where his covenant is with that he's saying, my Aleph Tav, my covenant is with the oath. My Aleph Tav, my covenant is with the covenant, the countries that I've given or that I promised. And all I'm doing is telling you to be obedient to what I'm telling you. So there's a lesson for us here, because it's the same pattern that Abraham went through. We see Isaac going through the same thing, as you guys have pointed out. But as we see here, the Aleph Tavs are pointing to certain aspects that he has made covenant agreements with, and he's restating it to him as he goes through this same process that his father went through, it seems. And the reason that he is going to do this and Baruch him is quite simply because Abraham obeyed his voice. He guarded his watch, what he told him to. He guarded his commandments, his statutes, and of course his Torah, as we've learned here. So it's interesting. There's a lot for us to see here about, again, obedience and listening to the instruction that Yahuah gives us, so that we can receive the promise. And there's that promise that he gave Abraham. Now we're seeing it walk out. And I just see that it's so interesting that they're in parallel with each other, even down to the wife and what he said. You think he would have learned from his father, but he seems to be in the same kind of position as Abraham, where he felt he had to lie or say this because of this woman's beauty. So does that mean that he was Baruch they were both Baruch with some beautiful women, that they were in fear of saying, hey, that's my wife, because they were going to get killed? I mean, I'm amazed that they both got the same confession about their wives, and that their wives are spoken of in exactly the same terms. So like father, like son, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely something to say about, we're talking about actions. It's definitely something to say about word versus deed. If I tell my son to do something, my youngest son at 11, he's going to do it without question. But if he watches me do something, he's going to imitate. Did he come to the same point, seeing these people having fear, and say, well, this is what my pop did, I'm going to do the same thing, And it's funny because we looked at Abraham, when Abraham said, this is my sister, and we said, okay, but it was a sister. But then we looked at sins of omission and sins of commission. Lying doesn't just mean that you're not telling the truth. Lying can also mean that you're withholding truth. So, no, he wasn't lying that was a sister, because it was, but he didn't say, but it's my wife. So he took that part out, which would cause Abimelech and his men to sin against him. So we always have to look at what we do, as parents as well, because our children, they're going to imitate us. If they see us living on the edge of Egypt, doing as much as we can do just not to do the wrong thing, but being right there, then that's the way they're going to live their life. If they see us completely committed to the Father, his law, statutes, and judgments, then that's what they're going to remember. That's what they're going to emulate. So that's a good lesson, even in that. Hands are up. Nate Stone, then Mike, then Emeka.
Oh, I just had my hand up for the next verses. So that's.
Oh, okay. All right, you got it. As soon as they finish, you can read.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. No. So my thing is with the whole Abraham thing, right?
We're going back to chapter 20.
Well, yeah, just
okay.
Because I don't want.
Right, let's go back to chapter 20 again. One more time. Go ahead.
Well, no mind.
No, Mike.
The only reason why we're not fully agreeing right now is because we are now doing what Abraham did and assuming that he saw something when he actually. This was the same incorrect action that this is the second time he's done it. The first time he did it is because of this. He says in Genesis 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said when they're going to Egypt, when he would come near to enter into Egypt, he said unto Sarah his wife, behold, now I know that you are a beautiful woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, the Egyptians shall see you, that they shall say, this is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. We can't go outside of what it says. So when he does this in Genesis 12 and lies by his wife, we can't. I mean, you can assume, but you can also just use the text and say, well, he did it for this reason. He's doing the exact same thing. We can only factually say that he's doing it for the same reason, because his wife is beautiful and he's afraid that they will kill him. Anything that has to do with actually his sin, his doubt, and the Father fulfilling the word he said that he was going to have a son through Sarah. But if they kill me for Sarah, how is that going to happen? So y'all promised him a word. He's now doubting, in fear, and now making assumptions based on somebody else because of his fear of how beautiful his wife is. So the whole situation has nothing to do with Abimelech or doing anything. That doesn't say anything to imply that. It's only actually pointing out Abraham's error. And we're taking away his error and appointing it. No, this was Abraham. He was an.
We can't hear. You're going in and out. We're hearing like every fourth word, and you're saying
well, that's all that's necessary. No, I'm kidding. Okay, is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So my point was the only thing the scripture is revealing is Abraham's error. The fact that he was doubting, and he was doubting God's word.
Not fully. So you're saying, all right, go ahead.
Well, what about now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the issue was Abraham. He was assuming that they were going to kill him, just like with the Egyptians. I'm not saying the Egyptians were. I didn't read the whole chapter 12 to get that context, but I'm saying he said that he did the same thing with
That's
Egypt.
awful.
And the reason was his doubt.
Yeah, brother Mike, you're gonna have to hold off, bro. We can't hear you.
Yeah.
I'm not making out nothing you're saying, Harley.
I'm gonna get on my wife's phone.
All right, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, just doing some background on the Philistines. You see that in chapter 10 of Genesis, just going through the genealogy, it says in Mitzrayim begat Ludiam and Anamim and Lachaban and Naphtuhaim and Patrushaim, and Kakluhim, out of whom came Philistine. And so the Philistines, their forefather, or who the city was named after, Philistine, he came from the genealogy of Mitzrayim. So I could understand why Abraham thought there was no fear of Elohim, because they were from an idolatrous people, and this is coming from the genealogy of Ham, so we see Cush and Mitzrayim and Put and Canaan are all the children of Ham, who, if you really look into their background, there's a lot of idolatry in those nations, and the fear of Yah is not there. So I can see why Abraham would have thought that there might have not been the fear of Elohim there, just considering the background of who they came from.
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
mean
true.
it's true or not. Doesn't mean it's true, but I can definitely see where his mentality would have came from.
Yeah, I had looked at some history too regarding the Philistines and the fact that they fought against Egypt and they lived on the coastline right on the edge of Egypt. The Egyptians actually called the Philistines the sea people. You know what I mean? Because that's where they resided. That's where all of this was taking place. They were enemies of Egypt at one point. So the assumption is very clear. But whether or not they were is the argument. Like we see the assumption and we fall for assumptions too much. But we can't fall for the assumption the other way either. That's why it's worth looking at even more. But let's go with Will. And then, Mike, if you want to finish up what you were saying, and then we'll let Nate read the next several verses.
Yeah, I'll just be real quick. Based on everything that we're all introducing here, I'm beginning to be, and I'm considering the assumption as well. Based on everything we are all introducing here, which is factual scriptures, and what we're making out of these things, I'm beginning to be more and more convinced that it was a combination of both. I'm starting.
Yeah, that's not a bad place. That's not a bad place to have an understanding here.
So I think we all have kind of hit this nail on the head. I'll just leave it at that for respect to the topic. But I think based on what Mecca just introduced, which I was not aware of that. I might have read it in the past, but what Mecca just read really confirmed that there was some kind of cautious approach towards that area there with him and his son. Not so much that his son wanted to, maybe his son recognized what his father had gone through, and he had that in the back of his pocket to carry with him. But that goes in combination with the whole picture as they approach that land, based on history.
For sure, absolutely. Because all that will be contextual to his understanding.
Yes.
For sure. All right, if there's nothing else, Mike, let me.
Brother Mike's not gonna let you forget.
Almost got out of there.
Almost got out of it.
No, you didn't. Can you hear me?
No. Brother Nick.
Beautiful.
Go ahead.
Okay, so again, we're all in agreement on what it is saying, but we can't. The whole point is Abraham did assume, and according to what happened, his assumption was wrong. So even if we can still assume based off the people that they might have been related to, like Emeka was showing, that all that just shows is why he was assuming. But at the end of it doesn't matter what the reason of assuming is. He assumed, and it was proven wrong. So that's one. Two, the reason why he did it, why he assumed, and the reason why he lied, so that's a sin itself, was because the true sin of him doubting what y'all promised him. Y'all promised him that he was going to give him a seed and give him the land and all the descendants, all the promises y'all gave him, and here he is doubting that because he thinks these people are going to kill him.
So wait a second. So that's an assumption too, because if you're saying that Abraham did it to preserve his life, he said it.
Exactly.
He thought they were going to kill him. It didn't have anything to do with the promise.
No. Listen to what I'm saying. As we agreed, Abraham thought they were going to kill him. If they kill him, then can y'all keep his promise to him by doing all these things? Y'all promised him something.
Yeah, but at that point, so he's trying to save his own life so that Yah's promise can become true. That's what you.
No. That's not what I'm saying. He is trying to save his own life, even though God promised him to do things that God has not yet done. So he's saying that he's assuming that these people are going to kill him, even though God said he's going to have something. He's going to do something with him. How can God? I'm not saying that he did it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he did it to fulfill God's word. I'm saying he did it because he doubted. He feared the men. And the reason
absolutely.
he did it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point was the point to get him to the point of having faith. That's why there was a process of his faith building, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so there's that, and then the other fact that he did it because his wife was beautiful. There's nothing to show that these people are worshiping idols, that these people are doing anything. Just because people that live close did it, everything is being an assumption. Even Abraham assumed, and now we're assuming the same thing, even though it was proven that they were righteous, that they did it.
I actually think we're good for the good of this study. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's any hard opposing towards what you're saying. I mean, we clearly see what you're saying. I know I do. And I think Brother Will just said he sees it. And that's why he sees both. You know what I mean? He sees what Abraham saw, what he assumed, the fact that there may have been something that led to him having that understanding based on the history of the people, based upon them being at war with Egypt, based upon him knowing that that was an idolatrous area from his father. It was still Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
There was specific reasons for him having that thought. What did he see when he walked in? Did he see some of the participants? Because it's clear that everybody didn't, even if Abimelech, you're saying, was righteous, everyone didn't follow and live true to it, because as soon as he was gone, they filled up his wells and broke the covenant with Abraham. So there's something there. And I think what Will was trying to say is he's marrying the two ideas and saying there's a reason for both of those things to coexist.
Assumptions based on historical facts. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
See, I thought you were saying. I thought you were saying assumptions because he actually saw stuff there to show that they didn't fear. That's what I thought you were saying. Okay, I got you. No, absolutely. Then in that case, absolutely. That's I would agree with that 100%.
Cool.
All right, Brother Nathan.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Are we ready to read? What are we going to do? The next 8 or 7?
7, yeah.
Okay. And it came to be, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, sovereign of the Philistines, looked through a window, and he watched and saw Issac playing with Ribkah, his wife. So Abimelech called Issac and said, "See, truly she is your wife. So how could you say she is my sister?" And Issac said to him, "Because I said, lest I die on account of her." And Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people had almost lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt on us." And Abimelech commanded all his people, saying, "He who touches this man or wife shall certainly be put to death." And Issac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. And Yahuah blessed him. And the man grew great and went forward until he became very great. And he came to have possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great body of servants. And the Philistines envied him.
What you see, brother?
Well, I'm seeing Yahuah still blessing Abraham, or I'm sorry, Yitzhak. I mean, is still blessing Yitzhak for maybe even being withholding truth, that he still was with him, and so I guess I'm questioning, because I don't see any necessarily like reprimand. I don't see Yahuah necessarily reprimanding him for that.
You said reprimanding?
Well, because he, we see that he kind of withheld truth for talking about Rivka being his wife, and to Abimelech, and we see that Yahuah still blessed him for withholding that that truth.
Yeah, I would say that that's his grace and mercy shown there. Because when we read Hebrews chapter 11, we don't hear about the mistakes of the hall of faith there. We don't hear about the mistakes. We only hear of them that believed and followed Yahuah. So clearly, Yahuwah's plan is being completed even through the failings of men, the failings of women, and how that holds true to us today. We do have shortcomings, if we're completely honest, on a daily basis. That doesn't mean that we run away from them. That means we come closer to him. So praise Yah for pulling that up. What else do we see there, Brother Will?
Yeah, just feeding off of Nate, I was actually thinking about what he just brought up, and you actually questioned Mike on earlier. When you was asking, do you believe that the reason he was spared like Abraham was to continue in his plan? I was actually there's a part of that I have to support, because there is a divine plan regardless of what happens in between. So all these historical events that just goes against the nature of the word I'm looking for, the nature of morale, biblical morale, or the nature of love and the nature of things, the way Yah orders us to represent. And this kind of what happened with Abraham was going to happen, and there was lessons to be taught and learned there, but yet it has to come back to the original plan, which is to spread the seed. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone.
It absolutely does. I mean, I think as we're reading through these particular chapters, 25, 26, 27, we see that. We see Yah promise Yitzhak and Rebecca that the older will serve the younger, but we still see them do things to help that come true. And like they didn't need to help Yah. But even in the midst of what they did, he made the path. He made his way, straight. So there's definitely truth in that. I agree, brother Mecca.
Things that don't make sense to us, that do not make sense to the human mind, is not necessarily lining up with his works, what he's trying to get done and accomplish and teach us. So one of the things I've learned is to put a stop to myself when I'm getting ahead of myself with trying to understand everything that Yah is at work at. Sometimes I've learned that I have to just be still and let it be, and he will introduce the clarity, So this is just one of those stories that's a little tricky. when it comes to morale and, like Nate just brought up, because actually the gentleman that I was speaking to on this chapter, I was having a discussion the other day. He asked me, well, how is it possible that, God didn't punish Abraham and Isaac for lying like this? And later on in chapter 26, I think there was, if I remember right, there was introduced some kind of phantom illness or something that came over them, that area there. We'll have to continue reading, but I'm not sure of the chapter, but it's actually something that he was, Abimelech was voicing, that you have brought this over, over us. We'll have to keep reading because the chapter goes on, but anyway, that's all I have to say on that. And the point is that there's a lot of lessons to be learned. This chapter can go for an eternity on many things, but his plan will prevail. That's the strongest message that I am getting, besides all the little ones. But the strongest message that I gather from this chapter so far is he will allow things that go against the way we feel, or that we believe should be going, things that go against the major morale, for the good of his plan. And I don't want to repeat myself, but that's just something I wanted to say.
Yeah, as far as the famine, that was at the beginning of this chapter. It also mirrors the same thing that happened with Abraham. That's the very reason that Abraham went into Egypt, and that's exactly why he told Isaac, do not go down into Egypt, even though there was a famine. So, Mecca.
Yeah, this event, it kind of reminds me of, remind me of what Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He says, let me see, in verse 7, he says, unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought Yahuah thrice or 3 times, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. So, looking at this situation, we see that in Isaac and Abraham, both of their in their moments of weakness, when they think, and they're fearful of their lives, yeah, they made certain decisions that we would definitely assume and say, no, this is wrong. But, Yahuwah, the same thing as he told, Paul here, he says, my strength is made, my grace is sufficient, and my strength. Through their weakness.
Did we lose him?
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we do now. We lost
you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So he says, yeah, my strength is made perfect in weakness. And so we see that through the weakness of Abraham and Isaac, when they're fearing for their life, number one, they made a poor decision to lie, but Yahuwah's grace is sufficient. And through that, his strength is made perfect and his plan does prevail, and his, for his promise. And so, we definitely, see that here, that even though you're in your weak moments, that's when you rely and lean on Yahuwah the most, and that's when his strength is made perfect.
Yeah, I agree. I like the passage you used, because it just marries into the whole idea of the Brit reveals the Tanakh. What's the saying? The the Old Testament is in the New Testament revealed. The New Testament is the Old Testament concealed. So we see things illuminated specifically as Paul explains things, as Yahusha explained things. We see those things that might have been mysteries revealed. And I think, when we look at the whole idea of what's happening here, with Abraham, with Issac here, Isaac, we also see that there is a learning for them, because they see how Yahuwah steps in and baruchs them and blesses them, even in the midst of what they would find shameful. They're trying to preserve their life, both of them here, thinking that this people is going to do thus and so. And in some cases, these people show that there is a moral compass even within them. Even though they're so-called pagans, specifically this Abimelech, they still have a moral compass enough to know that you don't take another man's wife. And because that was there, that was the protection that was needed in his weakness to make him strong. So, and then he blesses him after that. So, good stuff, brothers. What else do we see here?
I see a very interesting story unfolding here, and it seems like it's almost like word for word, like what this Abimelech had said to him was almost what was said to his father. What have you done? Why have you said this? Why have you lied to us? This guy had an understanding of the Torah for him to make the statement that he made about what he has done, and how you could have almost brought a great curse upon us, basically. If somebody would have laid with her, and not knowing, because when you read this, even in the Sefer, it shows here in verse 8 that it came to pass that where he's talking about Isaac was basically playing with Aleph Rebecca, his wife. So it's showing he has that covenant agreement with her, and then that statement is even made here in verse 10, where Abimelech said, "What is this that you have done to us? One of this people might likely have lain with Aleph your woman, and he would have brought guilt upon us, as a people." And so he had an understanding of that, and immediately it goes on and says, Abimelech charged Aleph all his people. So he made a covenant saying that nobody's basically to touch this man or this woman, or they'll be put to death. And then it goes on to say that Isaac sowed in the land, and he received the same year 100-fold, and Yahuwah baruch him. All his possessions, his flocks, his herds, his servants, the promise, the covenant is unfolding before him, just as Yahuwah had promised. And I don't know if there was something that Yahuwah was allowing to happen here with both of them to do what they did, but it brought a place of awareness of who they were to these people. And they lived there a long time, and they were very baruch in that land and became great, it says. So he began the process of fulfilling that covenant, and we see that unfolding here. And it started through Abraham, and you see the same things unfolding, the very same words almost that we hear happen with his father, same thing we hear with the son. And that's pretty ironic in a sense, It's like, why? Was it almost like a mirror of those things happening? But, I guess Yahuwah, that was his way. It happened. It's a beautiful story, right? So that's what I see. Covenant promises being fulfilled. So Hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah for us being part of that seed, yeah?
Absolutely. And I just, before we go to the next 7 verses, I wanted to just look at the Hebrew wordplay in verse 8. It says, now it came to pass when he had been there a long time that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked through a window and saw, and there was Isaac, showing endearment to Rebekah, his wife. And the Hebrew wordplay literally says in the Hebrew, Isaac, because of the name of Isaac, what Isaac means, laughter. The Hebrew wordplay there is he who laughs was laughing with his wife, Rebekah. So there was the way that they were interacting, the way that they were laughing together is something that is only be seen between the love of a husband and a wife. You know what I'm saying? There was a clear statement that Abimelech saw in the way that they were laughing and enjoying each other. And he knew that it was much more than a brother and sister could experience. So it was clear. And as we look at pictorial Hebrew, we got to know that in the Hebrew, that's what it means. That's what we see. He who laughs is laughing with his Rebekah, his wife. Amen. Who wants to take the next 7 verses, verse 15 through 21? Brother JP.
Yeah. You know I'm ready. It says here, I'm going to try to read this translation, so bear with me. And the Philistines had stopped up all the wells which his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father, and filled them with dirt. And Abimelech said to Yitzchak, go away from us, for you are much mightier than we. So Yitzchak went from there and pitched his tent in the Wadi Gerar and dwelt there. And Yitzchak dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he called them by the names which his father had called them. But when Yitzchak's servants dug in the Wadi and found a well of running water there, the herdsmen of Gerar strove with Yitzchak's herdsmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Issac, because they strove with them. And they dug another well, and they strove over that one too, and he called its name Sitnah.
Pull it out, brother.
I don't really have much, brother, to be honest with you. I'll sit back and listen.
So we come here to these 7 verses, and we go from Isaac prospering and the Philistines seeing it, to them envying him, to them saying, basically, get out, right? So what do we see as far as the wells? What is the connection here to the wells? Anybody know? Abraham, the covenant Abraham made with Abimelech. Remember that? So that these wells would be protected, right? Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech for the rights to these wells. So basically, they sabotaged them. They took these wells and they poured dirt in them, stopped them up. So here we have Isaac going down to the same place that he might find living water. And during this time, the Philistines are watching, and they're saying, okay, this is our water. So they put dirt in the wells to stop the water, and then when he digs out the wells to get water, they say it's theirs. So there's obviously a breaking of a covenant that was already in existence, and now an attempt to seize what was then found. So there's a clear distinction here between who these people were versus who Issac was and who Abraham was. And the fact that they had a covenant and broke it showed that there was no honor there. So there's something that's trying to be said here. And then the words that are used here with the names, for instance, he says in verse 20, but the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with the Isaac's herdsmen, saying the water is ours. So they called the name Issac, meaning quarreling, arguing, strife, because they quarreled with him. Verse 21, then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called its name Sitnah. Sitnah in the Hebrew is the same root word where we get Hasatan from. So we know that that is a clear distinction of the mindset that was causing the division or the distraction or the strife between the two groups of people. That's a strong word, Sitnah. And moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it, so they called it Rehoboth, because he said, for now Yahuah has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Verse 22. We didn't read that far, but it kind of opens up this whole idea of the difference between the water that Yahuah springs and the water that's in a normal well. There's a living water. You know, they call Yahusha the living water. You know, in the custom back then, there was a difference between stale water that was found in a well and a spring of water. As a matter of fact, they would go around traveling in the custom, and they would have bottles of fresh spring water, and they would say literally, living water, who wants living water? You know, and there was a clear difference. There was a vibrance to it. It was filled with minerals and vitamins, what they needed to live. And Yahusha likened himself to that living water. This was the spring that they dug up when they reopened the wells that were promised to Abraham. So I just wanted to pull some of those things out. Anybody else see anything there? Brother Nate.
And Jack, stay over here. Sorry, I'm going to yell at my dog real quick. No, come on up here. Excuse me. Yeah, you kind of touched on the points that I was gonna touch on about the living water. I see like like the Torah, or Yahusha, I am the living water. He uses a few different metaphors. Eating of his body, or like the bread, if you will, and then living water, which represents Torah, and we know Torah, also is, kind of like blue, I guess, kind of what it's associated with. There's a lot of people associated with that, but I see that, like our fathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, they're finding this living water, made covenant with this living water. They dug it up from the earth, and then these people are burying it again, and then or claiming it as their own, in breaking a covenant. I kind of see some shadows in there with covering up his laws and instructions, with earth. We know that the beast, rises out of the sea and out of the earth, so I don't know, I see maybe some shadows there. I don't want to go too far off into possibility land, but I definitely see that these people maybe in the future, usually the Hebraic understanding is cyclical, so we see this pattern then, And so, we maybe want to look for this pattern again today with people that are covering up the water, the living water, with earth, breaking covenants, and then trying to claim that it's theirs.
Well put, brother. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I agree with you. We have shadows, also called types. These same types are consistent throughout Scripture, and they keep being brought out in the same way. So, yeah, I like what you said about, covering up the truth, covering up the word, covering up the water. It definitely holds true, specifically now. And we know that, as we always know, that the word is three-dimensional, past, present, and future. So it's going to be continual, it's going to be consistent, and what you said is definitely true. So thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, yeah, interesting perspective here. When we look at these words that they name these wells, and if we look at the meaning of them and what they're actually really kind of saying, we see that there's quarreling always going before both of the wells that they named. And if we look at what does that name mean, well, the first one, Issac, means basically contention. So they basically were quarreling over this water, saying it was theirs, and with contention, and they were contending that it was theirs. So they were kind of basically coming against the covenant, as you said. And then as we look into the next one, where he's digging in, again another well, and they strive to contend again for that. And that one, the shitna, is basically hostility. Like you said, it comes from the same term as adversary, as hasatan. So we see that it's telling us a little bit of a deeper story when we look into those words that they're actually even naming it, because they're coming against that covenant. They're breaking it with contention and hostility. And when you look at it, really the basis of what they're trying to do here, it's pretty deep about trying to come against the herdsmen, trying to claim this as their own with contention, with strife. And in here, we don't see a whole lot of Aleph Tavs, but the ones that we do see are here in 18, where it says that Isaac dug again Aleph Tav, the wells of water. So he's trying to restore that covenant that his father had begun, because it says which they had dug in the days of Abraham, his father, for the Philistines had stopped him after the death of Abraham. And that's when he called their names by which his father had called him. So he's trying to reinstitute these same covenant wells of water, but they're being coming against with contention and with strife in that. So it's interesting when you see that playing out here by just the words that they are using to call these wells. Are they filling them back in? If they're calling their own, why would they fill it back in? I don't understand that. Oh, this is ours, so let's just fill it back in. It's like it's symbolic, of going against the covenant is what I see by using those terms and what they're doing. So
good stuff, brother. It's always important and pertinent to our understanding to see what the words mean. They kind of spell it out in the chapter, but I think the whole understanding of the quarreling and the strife is something that comes with the enemy. That's why that's a fruit of him. That's why there is, we're supposed to be aware of that and keep watch on that. When those things are occurring, there's a problem, and I think it holds true throughout Scripture and in our lives now. So as we're continuing to live out Scripture. I'm gonna go ahead and read the last the remainder of the chapter, and then we'll go back and discuss it. We stopped in verse 21 of verse 22. And he removed from thence and digged another well, and for that they strove not. So they did not strive here. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now Yahuwah hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. Verse 23, and he went up from thence to Beersheba. And Yahuwah appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the Elohim of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of Yahuwah, and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants digged a well. Verse 26, then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Azuth and Ahuzeth, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, wherefore come ye to me, seeing that ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? And they said, we saw certainly that Yahuwah was with you. And we said, let there be now an oath between us, even between us and thee, and let us make a covenant. Verse 29, that thou wilt do us no hurt, and we will not be touched. And we will not touch you. And as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace, thou art now the blessed of Yahuwah. And he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning, and sware one to another, and Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came, and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, we have found water. And they called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day. And Esau was 40 years old when he took his wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and Rebekah. So I just wanted to look at a few things, and then we can move on and discuss the whole thing. So what stood out to me here was the fact that Yahuwah is speaking to Isaac, and I just thought about the complete life of Isaac. Obviously he watched his father worship Yahuwah, but then he was taken to the top of Mount Moriah to be sacrificed, right? So there was a complete understanding of who Yahuwah was and the fact that he wasn't sacrificed. And I'm sure his father explained to him everything that needed to be explained, but there had to be a fear of Yahuwah to him, a healthy fear, in so much that Yahuwah had to tell him who he was when he spoke to him. Like, why did he have to tell him who he was? Fear not. I am the Elohim of your father, for I am with thee. So it drew a question to my mind as to the instances that we see him interact with Isaac are very minimal. We see him speak to him when the twins are born. We see him speak to him when he tells him, don't go down into Egypt. And we see him speak to him here so that he understands who he is and that his covenant will be kept with him just as it was with his father. It just stood out to me as something that Yahuwah speaks when necessary. You know, he doesn't, when he speaks, it's not just to speak. He has something specific to say, you know, and how it stands out to me that when he speaks to Isaac, there's this reverence, there's this worship that takes place because he immediately does what his father did, built an altar and then worships, you know. So I saw that in reference to what we were studying early this morning, and I thought that made, you know, complete sense. And then the other thing I looked at was the last verse after it talks about Esau taking 2 wives from the Hittites. It says it brought great grief to Isaac and Rebekah. So Mike earlier brought out the fact that one of the reasons that Yahuwah was explaining to the Israelites, don't mingle with the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hizzites, was because they were corrupted people, you know. And the whole point of this is, you know, if you are a single man, if you are a single woman, we could stop here for a minute. Don't marry a Hittite. You know what I mean? There are several reasons why Yahuwah wants you to have like mind, like worship, like reverence with the person that you will be mated with for life. Like we talked about it before. It's hard enough being married to someone that you know, believe everything the same with. There are difficulties and struggles and hurdles that you have to get over, you know. Following Yahuwah makes it easier, but there are still difficulties. How much more so when you're with someone that doesn't? It says it brought grief to them. It brought grief of mind. This is a painful word here. It's not just they were sad. They were heartbroken that he did this. And, you know, some of us, you know, speak of, you know, divorces and breakups and difficulties in marriage. You know, if you have the opportunity to have a Yah-given spouse, wait for it. Don't go out on your own mind. I don't care what we talked about, the wrapping package of the evil one is beautiful. Don't be caught up in the way it looks, the way it sounds. Know the foundation of that person that you are mating with. He still doesn't want you to be with the Amorites, the Hittites, the Moabites. He still does not want us to do that. And how it not only brings grief to you, but everyone around you, everyone you touch. He can't bless it. So, you know, there's some brothers and sisters here that are single, looking to be mated, looking to find that person. Don't go down with the Hittites. Don't do it. I just wanted to pause there for a minute because it's relative to our everyday. You know, it's relative to our contemporary at this moment. He's still the same Yah, yesterday, today, and forevermore. Go ahead, brother.
I will surely avoid the Hittites because it sounds like they will surely bite. No, thank you. I'm good, man. Anyways, I'll go through this. There's a few things here that really caught my attention as you were reading these things. You know, what is this Beersheba? You know, you hear the Beersheba. What does that mean? It actually means a well of 7. So that's telling us that this is probably the 7th well that he ended up digging, that he ended up naming here. And it's interesting as you look in 24, Yahuwah appears to him, and he's reconfirming that he's his Elohim of his father, and that he's with him, and that he again is going to baruch him. He's going to multiply his seed, all for his servant Abraham's sake. And then that's where he built an altar there unto Yahuwah. He pitched the tent there. It sounds familiar. And there his servants dug a well. And then we go into this and we look at here, we start seeing the covenant again reestablished, reconfirmed. And then the thing is we see that the story continues where this guy, they're telling Isaac that the reason they did the things that they did to move him away is because they see that certainly that Yahuah was with them. So they said that they wanted to make an oath between them, that they would have a covenant being established, that they would have peace there, because they recognized and they knew that Yahuah was with him. Interesting when you see, if you walk in the way that he's called us to, being obedient, as we've seen earlier, we come under that covenant, and now we see that people actually see and they notice that Yahuah is with us. They want to try to make peace in some sort with us in that regard, because they see that we have the Creator, we have the Almighty with us. He took off and went in peace. And at the end of the story, now the grief of the Hittites, and I learned my lesson from you, Brother Rod. That's all I'm going to say. Shalom.
Praise God, brother. You know, one of the things that we have to be sure to do is not read this book as a history book. This book has legs, it has breadth, and we are able to live it. And, what a travesty it would be to ignore the lessons of the patriarchs, to ignore the lessons of those that if he calls someone's name out, there's something that he wants us to see. There's a meaning of that name, and then there's the actions of the person that has that name. And he either wants us to do thus and so, according to the way they did it, or not to. So we got to be sensitive to hear Yah speak and pull those things out so that we have a practical application of what we read here. Otherwise we're just reading, and we want understanding. We want to know how to live. We want to know how to live so we can tell others how to live as well, or so that others can see us live and want to know what are our principles based on. And we can show them, So, amen, brother. Anybody else? There's a lot there. Don't be shy, my brothers and my sisters.
We got only a couple minutes before our 2 hours will be up.
Oh, yeah, we got 4 minutes. Well, we can keep talking after we stop the recording.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share anything in that chapter?
Sounds like everybody's full.
Yeah, the one thing that I saw, you said the well of 7. It's also called the well of the oath. It's called both. That's the same well that his father did the exact same thing. So I can see why that would be. And I think it comes out again in Judges, the 7 part. Anyone else? Amen. Well, that concludes our Genesis chapter 26 study. And, I pray that, we were able to pull something out from this chapter that is going to help us through this week. Yah's word will never return unto him void. We have our steps for life. We have our instructions for life right here that we walk through every week. And we have to pay attention to these things. They save us from making those daily mistakes. It's funny, if I wake up in the morning and I just get on my day, I'm faced with all kinds of snares that I could easily fall into. If I'm refreshing myself with the word of Yah, with his songs of praise, I'm much clearer. I'm thinking much clearer. You know, it's better than a cup of coffee, I'm telling you. You know, so how we have to be Psalms 1, planted by the waters to be fully nourished on a daily basis. You know, we'll stand tall. You know, if we don't, we'll droop, wither up and die. That's a promise. I'm going to take Yah his promises. So praise Yah for his word, and I pray that you all received it today. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone.